Hi, folks, and welcome back to another episode of our podcast, When I Became a Gator. I'm your host, Phillip Cheng, and our podcast focuses on the stories of various alumni around the country in the hopes of bringing closer the Gator Nation, one Gator at a time. Tonight, we have a special guest, and his name is Dennis Ngin. If you were a student back in the early to mid 2000s, you might remember him, and we are so excited to have him on our show today. Dennis, welcome.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Excited to have you. Dennis, could you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, what you studied, and maybe a little bit about what you did after UF?
Sure. So I'm originally from St. Petersburg, Florida. I started at the University of Florida in 2002 and graduated in 2007. At UF, I studied political science and marketing, and I was very involved throughout campus life at UF. Primarily, I was involved in the Asian American Student Union, which was formerly the Asian Student Union while I was there. As an extension of that, I was involved in Pi Delta Psi, which is an Asian American fraternity, and also within student government for a few stints there. After graduating in 2007, I primarily spent my career in retail and e-commerce, ultimately led to my current role here now today. I'm currently the Chief Operating Officer for an agency called Visitor, and we're a commerce transformation agency, and we work with roughly 170, 175 brands as they look to build their e-commerce capability. So, some companies are never sold online before, and they're working with us to kind of start that journey. And other companies have, started online, and we're helping optimize certain parts of their business. So, kind of in a nutshell, that's time at UF and after.
Yeah. And, I was a freshman, I think your last year of school. And so we had 1 year of overlap. And, I do remember when you were you were ASU president that year, your last year, and you were student body treasurer. Was it the year before that?
It was 2 years before that, actually. So, so I think, gosh, that's bringing back good old memories there. So, when I first got to UF, I knew I wanted to get involved in the community, and I chose to get involved in the Asian American Student Union, Asian Student Union at the time. In my sophomore year, I was the treasurer for ASU. And that was around the time period we kind of went through this process of renaming ASU to the Asian American Student Union.
Yeah.
And then in my junior year, right before my junior, I ran for student body treasurer and ultimately became student body treasurer for a year. After I was student body treasurer, I actually took a year off to do an internship in Tallahassee. I worked in state government for a year. And then came back in my final year at UF as the president of ASU. Kind of wrapped up my career there.
Very nice. And so we're curious, on the show, we really want to know a little bit more about the time or maybe a moment or an experience that you had where you felt really connected to the university or where you felt like you were truly a Florida Gator.
Sure. And, I think what's interesting for me with this question is that certainly there was like the macro experience. I was like, man, it's great to be at UF, but there's a lot of micro experiences as I think about kind of my journey through life and where I am today that really can contribute to a connection to UF. So I guess I'll start with the macro experience. Yeah. In 2005, I was part of the preview staff, and preview is essentially an event, if you will. So every incoming student at the University of Florida spends a couple days during the summer as they get acclimated to UF. So they register for classes, they learn about the university, they explore the university, et cetera. So I was one of the student volunteers that helped bring in new incoming students. And, for me, it was a summer where I had an opportunity to interact with students from all across the country, families from all across the country. And no matter where they're from, their backgrounds, their stories, their history, they all shared this ambition, this dream of bettering themselves, bettering their lives as students at the University of Florida, right? And UF was kind of this opportunity for all of them. And I'll tell you, having had that time to share those experiences with all those students and my peers at preview staff, that was a phenomenal experience. It made me grateful to be a student at UF, to see all the hope of folks coming in, and it really solidified my passion for UF.
Yeah.
And then, that was like the main macro experience. But then after UF, I spent a lot of time, and at one point I was a traveling consultant. So, walking down the airport wearing a hoodie or a University of Florida hat and hearing a Go Gators in the distance. I mean, that's, what better, who else does that? What better experience is that? I mean, to me, that was one of those micro moments. I remember I actually went and pursued an MBA at the University of Florida and had classmates that graduated from Florida. And it was like that, when you find out that somebody else went to Florida, there's just this instant connection. It's like, oh yes, I'm a Gator, you're a Gator, went to football games, and that immediate connection has been so special for me. And I get that throughout my life, and I look forward to being able to scream out a "Go Gators" in the airport now and then too. So.
Oh, definitely. I remember when I had left Florida as well. I moved to Hawaii for a couple of years, and just every single plane ride back and forth, multiple legs, there was always somebody in the airport on the plane with a Gator hat, with a sweater, and you just have this uncontrollable urge to yell "Go Gators" to that person, and you want to make sure they hear it because they need to acknowledge.
Yeah, it's like your eyes are looking for that orange and blue, and like I said, it's fun, and it's part of the experience of being an alumni of the university, I think. So it makes it really, really special for me.
Yeah. As you probably know, UF has been rising in the rankings of top public universities, and that has been great news every year to hear that UF is getting higher and higher. What are some of your hopes for UF in the future?
Oh gosh, I mean, I think continuing to accelerate in the world of academia, but for me, I see UF as a place of learning, as an educational institution. So, my hope, and really maybe it's a hope for incoming freshmen too, is really two parts of it. Number one, recognize what you have in front of you in terms of the University of Florida. I think I didn't get to see that, I didn't get to realize that until after I graduated. So I kind of wish somebody told me before I started UF. Mm-hmm. And then number two, really kind of take it, really embrace that opportunity you have. So recognize the opportunity and embrace it. I guess I'll explain that. So in the first part, in terms of recognizing what UF is and the opportunity there, I mean, there's very few, if any, institutions like the University of Florida. And again, I didn't realize that until probably through that second application cycle when I was pursuing an MBA. I was like, man, UF is kind of neat. And there's a few reasons for that, right? So like number one, like you said, phenomenal academic institution, rising in the rankings, US News, we're like encroaching on the top 5, which was unheard of during our times. Like, wow, UF is really, really climbing the rankings. And for me, climbing the rankings means that number one, we have a great academic institution. Number two, the people that we get to attend school with are phenomenal. The people I'm interacting with student-wise are great people that I'm learning from as well. Mm-hmm. And then the educators, right? The educators that are teaching and educating us. And I'll say that, when I think of educators, it's not just the professor that stands in front of you in the classroom, but it's also the phenomenal people in student affairs that are helping students host and conduct and do extracurricular programming. Those folks are phenomenal as well, and certainly had an impact on my life. Mm-hmm. So that is fantastic for UF. So that's number one, the rankings. I think number two is the sports, right? The sports program. And it doesn't matter if you're not a sports fan, right? I mean, I wasn't the biggest sports fan when I was at UF, and I certainly became more over time, but we rank well in football, basketball. I think we're like number one in gymnastics, so the overall sports program. And I think why that's important is that for someone like me, it creates a culture and an environment where no matter if you're a year out of school or 20 years out of school, you have this connection to UF because of that pride of orange and blue, pride of being a Gator. So that being a top tier sports program is important. And then number three for me is just, the diversity on campus. I mean, our school is so large, University of Florida is so large that we have an opportunity to interact with somebody that thinks exactly differently from us, exactly differently from me, with a different background, different everything. And that's a beautiful thing to have in terms of creating an environment of learning, right? And yes, certain schools might be great in academia, might be great in sports, and might be great with diversity, but to have a combination of all three and to be able to do all three so well makes UF just a special place. And I think it's important as students to come in, when you come in, to recognize that.
Oh, absolutely. Those top three, I mean, those should be, I think, written on a wall somewhere. You said it so well. Before we end our show tonight, are there any people or perhaps even places on campus that you want to shout out to who were super influential to your time at UF?
I think it's every single student I had the opportunity to interact with. So there were certain students. I mean, I think, Jamie Bailey was somebody that got me involved in ASU. I was sitting in an office and she kind of pulled me into a couple of kaleidoscope meetings that led to, me meeting other folks. I mean, that's always been a part of kind of my experience. So certainly folks that are working with student affairs. So Mary Kay Schneider, Mary Kay Carradine was important for me in terms of my development. I have a good friend there now, Will Atkins, who's in charge of diversity there at University of Florida. He was part of my experience as well. So I think certainly there's quite a few people that are special there at UF.
Oh, awesome. Dennis, thank you for taking the time tonight to share a little bit about, or to take a trip down memory lane and to share some of your experiences at UF. We hope that you stay safe, your family is safe. And for all of the listeners out there, if you'd like to be on our show, please send us an email to ufasianalumni@gmail.com or reach out to us on social media. Thank you, good night, and go Gators.
Go Gators, thank you.